Hey, everybody. Welcome to PDQ Live. Today, I am joined by none other than Brock, the Brockstar. Today, we're going to be talking about the basics of Git.
We are going to be talking about the basics of Git, and we're also joined by our very own Microsoft MVP, Andrew Pla, who's... Andrew, you there? You going to tell us a little bit about Git before we get started?
And maybe I can get it?
Yeah.
Oh boy, it's one of those, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So Git,
buckle up.
the actual definition of Git is it is a distributed version control system used to manage and track changes in source code. So basically, it's a advancement on saving multiple copies of your file with the extension of .old or .old1. This is a accepted and industry standard way of managing repositories of code and keeping track of changes and reverting if you run into issues.
Nice.
Sweet.
Boom.
So that's Git, but what's GitHub then? Because I hear both of these thrown around a lot, right?
That's a great question. GitHub is a very popular platform for GitHub repositories. It has a bunch of collaboration tools put on top of Git, but the back end of each project you look at, it is a Git repository. But it's a very popular site. There's a lot of big projects on it that you may be using, but you can check that out and you can open up issues on projects. You can manage your own work. A lot of cool things there.
Okay. You guys just used a whole lot of big words. I'm a simple person. So Git, I'm going to say back, is like a video game save file.
Yeah.
Is that like a way of saying it? Like, oops, I made a mistake. Oops, I checked out this version. I need to go back.
Yeah.
Is that an okay way of thinking about this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a few other things you can add into it. Obviously, video game save files, really cool. You can go back and be like, oh, hey, I kind of messed up. Maybe I made the wrong choice or something. I'm going to load the save file up and start from there. Git takes that to another level because you could load up that other thing, then merge it with your main branch, and then do all sorts of stuff going forward from there if you wanted to. It keeps these save states for you. So again, kind of like Andrew said, you don't have to have, hey, my awesome PowerShell script won, my better PowerShell script. This is the final PowerShell script. It's like, I think we've all fallen into that trap.
So you're saying the folder on my desktop called PowerShell that has new file 1, new file 1-1, new file 1-1 final isn't the way to do it?
I mean, let's face it, we all do it right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just kind of a standard sysadmin practice, I think. But it turns out there is a better way. And we are going to dive into Git and GitHub and kind of try to simplify it. If you're trying to get into it as a sysadmin, it turns out it's not just a developer and engineer tool. We can actually use it for ourselves as well. So
let's get into it. So we first have to install Git, right?
Correct.
Like we need this thing installed.
Yeah. So we're going to install Git. You got a couple options here. Now, you could just go and download Git directly from their website. And if you're a heathen like Josh over here, you could go with Mac OS. I'm kidding, by the way. Mac is awesome. As I watch my laptop battery die, I'm just so tempted to be like, just put me on a Mac. If you're Team Penguin, you got that. And, if you're afraid of change like me, you can go Windows.
Yeah.
But I went through this process, and I'm sure some of you have gone through it as well. But this might be the longest installer I've ever seen. There are more options that come up throughout this. There's probably 15 pages of you click next and it's another page, and click next and it's another page. Finally, after 5 or 6 of these pages, I just started spamming next, just to get to the end. It was crazy. So we are not going to do that.
No.
Instead, we're going to take the easy route. Obviously, if you have PDQ deploy, you could use PDQ deploy. We are going to use PDQ connect here. We've got a pre-built package. Okay. So that is going to update automatically. We can go get it, and it's just going to have the latest version for us, so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Chad, our librarian, has made this easy.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
We're on our packages tab. Type in Git. It'll search for us, so we will select it. We're going to deploy it. We're going to deploy it to our device here.
All right. We're on what? Cocoa Pebbles?
Cocoa Pebbles.
Cocoa Pebbles. All right.
I love Cocoa Pebbles.
I don't.
I mean, to be fair, I love all cereal.
Okay. All right.
All right. So we can check on that deployment status.
It takes a minute. It's kind of a it's not huge, but it's not little.
Right. Yeah. So that's going through. The next thing you're going to want to do is actually create your GitHub account. And I'm not going to go through that process. I've already done it here. But if you go to GitHub, it's going to ask you for a username, an email address, password, standard stuff. It is kind of cool though, as you go through it, it's got like a terminal or a console type interface. So kind of shout out to
Ooh, fun little
techie
UX.
people. Yep. Oh,
Yeah, okay.
I go back, look, it's already completed. So
Look at
we're
that.
good to go there.
We got Git.
Yep. I can actually confirm it here. Let's open up control panel just to make sure.
You mean you don't want to do it live?
There we go. Look at that. It's
Okay.
there.
Yeah, there it is. All right.
All right. So once you go over here to GitHub and you create your account, this is kind of going to be the screen that you're looking at. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually create your repository.
Okay.
So we'll come up here to our plus button. We're going to say new repository
All right.
here.
What is a repository?
Repository, I mean, to really simplify it, it's a container. It's a bucket, it's a folder, it's a directory. It's just something to contain other things,
Here,
right?
put my stuff in this bucket. That's a repository.
Yep, exactly. So keeping it simple there.
All right.
So we are going to give our repository a name.
Oh,
Just-
you were
man.
on autopilot there
Dude,
with last
it's
name.
that username, you
Yeah,
know? It
yeah.
just
Ooh,
automatically
description.
fills in. All right, we're going to put a description in there. Bada, boom. Keep it classy to the webcast. All right, so you have an option here, public or private. Pretty self-explanatory. Public, it's kind of like open for anybody to see, view the files and stuff.
Okay.
We're going to go ahead and private since this is just a webcast demo. But again, if you want to work with others and you want collaboration and things like that, consider making it public for them.
Like community public, right?
Exactly.
Like you don't have to specifically invite. Like with a private repo, you can still invite people to it, but not the whole world.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. All right. README file is good to have. So we're going to create that, and that's just going to be kind of like it's when people show up to your repository, the README file is just going to have kind of a description of what your repository has in it, what it's for.
Just read my
things like
code. Documentation's for suckers.
that. Yep.
Okay.
All right. Couple other options. We aren't going to set these, but you have a .gitignore here, and these are actually .gitignore templates. So Git has a .gitignore file that lets you specify files that you want to ignore. Like, hey, Git, these files are in this container, but I don't really care that they're there. I don't want you to track them. I don't want you to track changes and stuff like that. So these files are here, but don't look at them. Don't worry about them. I don't want to be prompted to like update them and things like that. Just know that they're there and just ignore them. So you can set that here if you have kind of like a standard set of files that you want to ignore. You can do that. They've
Depending on
kind
the
of configured
language
these
you
for
have, right? Like if you just have stuff that's going to be static, forever static, like don't track changes. I don't care. You can
Right.
pick your language here. It helps out.
Yep.
Okay.
The other thing is a license. Now, I do kind of recommend going through here and probably picking a license, especially if you plan on sharing your repository and your code with others and you are okay with them, like modifying it, contributing to your project and things like that. Because if you do not go in here and pick a license, I think standard copyright laws apply to your content in Git and GitHub.
Okay. I am not a lawyer, but pick the right one.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe call your lawyer and ask him which one to pick.
Which of these?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. So I think we got everything we need in here. So we are just going to create this repository.
Sweet. All right. So let's see. We've got installed Git. We've got our repository. Now, how do we interact with this thing?
Right. So now that we've got this, we can see that we've got the only thing we have in here is this README file.
Because we
right?
just told it to make that.
Exactly. It just did it automatically for it. So now what we want to do is actually sync this with a local repository on our device. Okay. So the first.
GitHub server side, local files, local directory.
Yep,
We
exactly.
got to make them talk.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go here to this green code button. And we are going to, you can actually see our GitHub URL right there. And we're just going to copy that. Okay.
Bada bing.git.
All right. Next thing we're going to want to do is dive into VS Code.
Okay.
We're going to launch this as an admin just in case.
Yep.
Okay.
And we ran into this yesterday, right? Like we had VS Code open and then we installed Git and then it wasn't like available here, wasn't part of path.
Yeah, we tried to run a command and it didn't want to run it. And then we relaunched it as admin and it ran it fine. So we're just not taking chances. All right. So we are here inside of VS Code. We are going to open up the command palette and we are just going to type in git clone. You can see that it's automatically populating that for us. And then you'll see that the command palette changes and it says provide repository URL. So we're just going to paste that in there and hit enter. Now, this is where it's like, hey, where do you want to set this repository locally on your device?
Okay.
Right.
This is local files that will eventually maybe be synced
Right.
if you tell it to.
Okay. So I'm just going to the root of C. We'll
Okay.
create a folder here, git repo. And you could call this whatever, but keep in mind that this folder will kind of serve as your base for all your other repos. So we might just be dealing with one repository here, but if you want to get involved with other repositories, you could put them all here in this one base repository folder.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So like we'll see like the repository we just created on GitHub on the website show up in here. And if we
Correct.
cloned another one, we'll see them just follow this structure.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So we're going to set this as our destination.
Okay.
And you'll see down here, you get a little status going on. Now, I should say that I'm not getting the prompt here because I've already been through this process. But if this is your first time, you may get an authentication prompt to actually authenticate with GitHub as you clone that very first repository.
That makes sense, right? Because you have this private repo. It's yours. Do you really have access to it?
Right, exactly. All right, so we are going to open this up, see what it looks like. And you'll see, oh, we got another prompt here. This is going to be our trust prompt. Do you want to trust the authors of this repository? I mean, I don't necessarily trust myself, but I'm going to anyways.
Okay.
But if you are joining public repos,
Yeah, like maybe someone's put out this PowerShell module or collection of PowerShell modules or Python scripts or, insert whatever here. And it's like, hundreds of files. If I haven't gone through and read every single one and knew exactly what they're doing, I'm probably clicking the no. I don't necessarily trust these
exactly,
authors.
safe bet.
But if I'm working with my teammates on a shared repository, yeah, I'm going to trust those.
Ask yourself, what would Rachel do?
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
All right, I'm going to say trust here. And you'll see that we are at our Explorer page right here, and we've got our README file. And this should contain exactly what it has in the repo. And we can actually open up our File Explorer here, go over to our Git repo, and you can see that we've copied down this Bada Bing repository. Okay, it automatically did that for us.
There's our markdown file.
Exactly. So now that we've got that,
All right.
let's go ahead and put in some other stuff into here.
So
right?
maybe you're like me and you've had that folder called C PowerShell.
Yeah, or C scripts like this
See,
one.
oh, hey, you've got one too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can just copy that, right?
Yep.
Go into our Git repo, and we will just paste this guy in here. Okay, and that's going to have this PowerShell script in there. And then we can actually go in here and just manually create a couple other files.
All right.
So
Let's see.
we'll just add a notes file. We'll add some content in there.
Yep.
All right.
Nice.
And then we'll give that a save. Let's add one more file. We'll do, let's make a CSV file.
All right. Back to the future. Look at that. Now we have a CSV. Okay, so now we've got a subdirectory scripts with a script in it. We got our markdown file, and now we have our notes,
Yep.
which I think Bogdan called out in chat a little while ago, that you can actually use Git to track your notes. Like if you have this, like if you're like me, I have like a notepad or some document open that I'm just constantly dumping stuff into. Mm-hmm. It can track those changes too.
Yep, exactly. It's really good for documentation in general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anything you need to keep track of, this is a great way to do it. All right, so now we have a decent amount of content in here. So now let's go back into VS Code, and you'll see that we have, it's already tracked it. We got our scripts folder. We can open that up. You can see the script in there. We've got our Back to the Future CSV. We've got our notes file, and we still have that README file. But you'll notice a few things.
We got some GUI indicators happening here.
Yep, the GUI is trying to help you out. So VS Code integrates really well with GitHub, with Git in general, and it knows how to track it. It knows what commands to run when you're clicking on buttons and stuff like that. So we can actually open these up, and you'll look, if we hover over this U right here, it's saying that this file is untracked. Like, hey, we found this file in your repository, but we're not tracking it. We're not looking for changes and things like that. We just know it's there, right?
Yep. We know dailymeals.ps1 is in here.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we can then go to our source control button here.
Ooh, fancy.
And then from here, we can kind of take actions on the files in our repository. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to stage these files. So we can come up here or hover over changes, and we can hit this plus button, and you'll see it says stage all changes right there.
Why do I want to stage?
So this is good. For instance, if you have several files you're working on. Maybe you have a few files that are done and ready to kind of like be staged and committed. You're ready to move forward with those files, but you have other files you're working on, but you're not ready to do anything with those files. This would allow you to like, hey, these files are ready. Let me stage them. Let me commit them. Make a snapshot.
Yeah.
And they're good to go.
That makes sense. So yeah, if you're like me and like my browser tabs when you're in VS Code, and there's like 300 things that I'm working on at once, I can stage the individual ones that are ready.
Right.
This probably also gets really helpful if you're working with a team and maybe they're waiting on your changes.
Yeah.
Right. Or they want to see your changes.
Yeah, and that's honestly a lot of Git and GitHub is the collaboration side of it. When you're working with your team, I mean, you can definitely benefit from this if you're just working by yourself. But when you start to bring in other people is when you really gain a lot of value out of it.
Yeah. Rather than like sending the Slack message of like, here, copy paste, I'm working on this. What do you think?
Right.
You could just like, do a commit and be like, all right, there, it's up. Let me know, inline it, pull it back down, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. You'll notice here that once we staged those, the letter changed from an M to an A. Now this is saying that these files are being added. Okay. So these are brand new files. Hey, we haven't seen these before. These are going to be added if you keep moving forward, if you go to that commit process, which is the process that we are currently at. So to commit, really simple, you can add a message right here. That's probably the easiest way. That's the way I prefer to do it. Just add a message here, like adding files.
Okay. So this, like your commit message is, I did this thing. So when someone sees this commit, like maybe they're looking at your repo or they're looking at the history of things, you have that brief description. So you're not like, what happened when?
Yeah. And we were talking about this the other day. It's a really good, this is that save point, the video game analogy. This is like the commit is taking the snapshot of like everything as it is, and it's kind of creating that checkpoint, that save point for you. So you want to add information to it. Unfortunately, video games, you're left with just like a date and a time. And so it's like, oh, is that the right save file? Git and GitHub, you can actually like add a message to it saying, hey, this is what happened at this specific snapshot. So we can hit commit here. You can actually, even if you don't add a message there, if we hit commit, it's going to prompt you for it. So I recommend just adding it there anyways.
It's like, please tell me what you've done.
Exactly. It will force you to follow its procedures. So adding files.
Yeah, and you can get really strict here, right, on your repos. Like we showed a very basic repo with rules. Like as you get higher in like the tiers, if you want to pay for it, most of the time you don't need to. But you can start to set rules like, hey, like commits must have this, they must have that, and you can set team norms.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And you'll actually usually see that if you're browsing repos, they'll tell you like, hey, if you're committing something, provide this information and whatnot. So, all right, we are ready to commit this. So I'm going to hit the big green checkbox.
Send it.
Okay. Now,
where do these go?
So this commit, I mean, it kind of makes you feel like, hey, I'm done. I committed it. Not quite. So you did commit it. You created the snapshot, which we can see here, adding files.
Yep.
But if we go back to the website, and you can see it still just has the README file. If I refresh it, still just a README file.
Yeah. Even though we did commit.
Right. So we haven't synced our changes yet. So that's going to be the next step.
Okay.
So we'll come up here, big green sync button. Now, if this is your first time syncing, you may get prompted for a Git username and email address. And you can use that. There's a code here. This is actually a Git command.
Yep.
It's git config -- global user.name user.email, and then you provide the information.
Yeah, like don't worry about like trying to like copy that down right now. I think at the end of this, there's a bunch of different links that we can provide.
Yeah.
That are like, okay, I'm new to Git. Like we're also showing stuff here in the GUI. Once you get good at Git, then you can pretty much just live in the terminal,
right,
and do all of these things.
Exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, and this information that it's prompting you for, this is strictly for those commits. So it can say, hey, who committed this and what's their email address? This isn't the same as like you're authenticating into GitHub. This is different. This will save it in a global configs file in your user profile, actually.
Yeah. So it's like, your commit message and who you are.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So it's kind of a way to, who can I blame for this?
Yeah, we're also committing to main,
yes,
right? Do we want to talk about branching at all, or?
We will.
Okay.
We're going to bring that up in just a second. We probably won't dive too deep into it, but that is a big part of Git, and it's definitely one that we could probably dive into at a later time. And that's where you're really going to like, hey, I'm joining all these other repositories, and okay, I want to start my own branch.
I get to like
and
fork time, and then it's like, okay, when do I bring this back into main? Do I bring it back into main? It gets kind of complicated, but for this, I'm me tracking my workflow, and I'm new to Git.
Yeah. All right. So now if we go double check up here, give this a refresh. There we go. We've got our scripts, our notes, and our Back to the Future CSV. And GitHub is really cool. I kind of said this about VS Code, where it's like, hey, VS Code kind of knows what these files are and stuff. GitHub is the same. It knows what a CSV file. So if I click on that file, it's going to format it as a CSV file and be like, hey, that's what this is. And if we go to our script here and look at our daily meals, there it is. It's, it understands, hey, this is a PowerShell file. This is how I should format it and stuff.
Tilapia Thursday.
You like that? You
No,
like tilapia?
I do not. I don't like fish. So
Well, maybe we'll make a change to that.
yeah, we'll go to Monday. I'll leave it to you on Monday or Tuesday.
Okay. All right. So now that we've got that, I kind of want to show what it looks like when you change something, and kind of what the process looks like if you are using the Git commands versus just the UI.
Yeah, UI's great. Like especially if you're new to something, like the UI prompts you and guides you through this process.
Right. So if we go up here to our daily meals,
Yep.
right? You said you don't like tilapia Thursday. So we are going to change that to tuna fish Thursday.
Is that better though?
No, it's all right. But it'll work. It'll work.
All right. So you'll see that, the source control hasn't updated. It hasn't said, hey, you haven't changed anything. That's because I haven't saved the file. So if I come here, I save the file. There we go. All right. So now we go to the source control button. And it's like, hey, it's got a letter M. This is modified. Yep. So we've had U for untracked, A for added, M for modified.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and close that. And we can actually get a deeper dive into clicking on this folder. And this is going to show you what changed, right? This is cool because like it highlights it for you. Hey, it was this, now it's this. So we can see, hey, this was tilapia Thursday, now it's tuna fish Thursday. Are you okay with that change? And we can actually come up here, look in the more actions. We can do inline view, or we can do the split view. Some people prefer this one because it's not adding lines.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Yep.
Either way.
So now we've got this file here, and it's ready to be staged, right? Last time we went up here, staged it like this. We can actually come up here and just do the git command right in the terminal. So git add, and we'll do a period.
Okay.
The period is just going to be any files that it finds here in these changes. It's just going to stage them all.
Okay, because like the period's like the wildcard. The directory I'm in, the changes, stage them.
Yep.
Okay.
You could be specific. You could say, maybe you have several, and that's where you would want to say, hey, just this specific file or this specific
Maybe
file.
just deploy meals.ps1.
Right.
But we're going to get everything.
Yep. So we will run that command, and you'll see, automatically moved up here to stage changes, okay?
Okay.
And then from stage changes, we are now ready to add that commit, right?
Yep.
So again, using the command git commit, and you're going to add -m because that's going to be your message.
Oh, we had to have that anyway.
Went from tilapia to tuna fish.
Look at you. Like
is
an
a-
actual like good commit
See,
message.
You would. Yeah, everybody would get that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to run that one. All right, now it's been committed. If we go back here to our main branch, you can see we've got this new commit message.
Yeah.
So we're good there. Again, it's not going to show up on here. If we refresh it, it is still tilapia Thursday.
Yep. Because now we got to push.
Yep. All right, so git push origin main is what you're going to do.
So this is our branch, right? We're
exactly.
just mainline development. There's main branch.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So we're going to run that. That should hopefully go through. Okay.
Look at that updated in the GUI.
Let's check. Refresh that. There we go. Tuna fish Thursday. And I mean, just with a few like pretty simple commands in Git, it's like, hey, stage it,
Yeah.
commit it, and sync it.
And we can revert to this one or the one we did last week, or we could then fork it from the one last week. We can do all kinds of things. Instead of having like 14 different versions of a file, there is this one plus all of the commit history.
Right. And you could, kind of like you were saying, where you could fork it and stuff, is you can come in here, and if you were looking at a repository and be like, oh, hey, I want to create a branch of that, you would come up here to the little kind of like, this is where you see what branch you're on, add a name to it. So Brock branch or something.
Yeah.
And then you would have this create branch right here. And then in VS Code, after you did that, you would have an option to change your branch right here to the one you want to be working on.
Yeah. So maybe you have this stable project and you're deciding, I want to do something drastic. Like it's going to have breaking changes. I know it is, right? Okay. Then I'm going to come and I'm going to pull all of this down to my branch. I'm going to break everything, but my whole team can still be working on the main branch.
Yeah, exactly. And you might, if you do that, I did run into an issue where I had to do a fetch to pull in that new branch before it saw it inside of VS Code, but easy enough.
Okay.
But yesterday, Andrew was showing me some really cool stuff, though, that was kind of blowing my mind.
Yeah. Andrew, what are your top 2 things?
Number one, you got to make sure you have good commit messages. You mentioned video games earlier and save files, and usually those save files are like Medusa's Castle 0101 2024. You want to add a good commit message, so if you ever do need to go back in the future, you can have a quick jumping point. Point 2, which I think is sweet as heck, that would be GitHub code spaces. So you showed VS Code, and you have to have that installed and all set up, but sometimes you just want to be able to use the web browser. And if you open up a GitHub repository, and if you just press period while looking at it, it will open up a GitHub code spaces for you where you can modify your simple PowerShell script to change it to tuna fish or whatever other kind of weird stuff Brock is into.
Yeah. So I think if we open scripts, if we go to our
hit period right here.
Let's go back. Yeah. Ooh. Wait for him to catch up. All right. So, oh, wow. Okay. So this is like our editor of the README, but then we can like browse through the rest of the repo.
That is cool.
Yep. Make changes, save them. Bada bing.
Don't even need VS Code.
Okay. That's a really cool, like, I just want to use the web browser. I think that question came up. Speaking of questions, Kelly, do we have questions?
We do. We have, let me think. We have 3 that I would love to share with you.
I would love to try and answer them.
Okay, let's do this. Do you actually have to install Git, or can you just directly use GitHub? Sincerely, CM.
You can directly use GitHub. Here we are. Yep, just type that period. We got a code editor here. Is it as good as like a IDE?
Yeah, you're not going to have that same functionality if you don't install Git. Like you're going to run those Git commands. Anything you want to do local on your computer, you're going to need Git for. Okay, and that's not pre-installed, so you will need that installation.
Yep. All right. What else we got, Kelly?
We have a couple questions from Marcel. What's the differences between Git and SVN?
Sorry,
I'll take this one.
My brain just went immediately to tortoise SVN because we were talking about a tortoise. But Andrew, please take this one while I just chuckle in the corner.
Yeah, I'll step on this one, guys. So I have no clue what SVN is. So I have no clue what
All
the
right,
answer
clarification
is.
question.
But I know what Git is.
I
Yeah,
used,
what is SVN? I'll have to look that one up.
I used tortoise SVN a very, very long time ago. I can't tell you the differences. It's been a very long time, but it's just a different type of version control for files.
Yeah.
But I couldn't speak to the nuance.
I mean, Git is kind of praised for how it handles repositories and files and collaboration. The way it saves things is blob object. You know, it's not like it doesn't have like multiple versions of the same file out there. It's like, hey, we only track changes and things like that. So it's actually really
Just the
efficient
deltas.
with how it does it. Yeah, the deltas.
All right, we have one more Marcel question. This is where it gets good. See what I did there?
Tally mark.
What is your take on GitHub hosting a lot of malware, i.e. be careful what you are cloning? Marcel.
Here's my take. That's what the internet is. Like
The
people,
internet hosts a bunch of malware.
like people are going to put out there what they're going to put out there. If you don't know what you're running, you probably shouldn't be running it.
Right.
If you're cloning a public repo, you probably shouldn't trust it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that it takes once, mess around and find out.
Yep. I mean, it's got a pretty decent track record, I'd say. It's like, if you are being cautious and you're just joining these, really big, well-respected repos and stuff like that, I think you're usually okay. But anything can happen.
If the repo is just a bunch of base 64 encoded stuff, you probably shouldn't run it. Probably not a good idea.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Brock, thank you for the basics of Git. I learned a lot.
Absolutely.
For PDQ.
Okay, but hold up before we sign off.
Oh.
So I'm disappointed. I am extremely disappointed. And hopefully your tally and mine are different.
Oh,
Because
that's right.
I only have you guys doing 6 puns the entire span.
I had 7 total.
You had 7, so
But
we were
one of them was
close.
yours. But one of them was yours.
But the 100 replacing GET with GIT all just count as 1.
I just counted 7. Do we have anyone close to 6 or 7?
We have Doug.
Doug.
Doug
We have
K.
Doug. Dougie.
He said we would do 11.
All right, Doug.
Doug,
You get a prize.
that's right. Doug, just send us your mailing info to webcast@pdq.com. And I am very, very disappointed in all of us collectively. here.
Dang. What a note to end on.
All right, now you go ahead. You can sign us off on something happier, I guess.
All right. Well, let's see. Where were we? Okay. Thanks for teaching us something, Brock.
Yeah, absolutely.
For PDQ, I'm Josh.
And I'm Brock.
And over there is Lord Andrew, MVP of all things Microsoft. Thanks for joining our webcast today. I apologize for the lack of Git puns. Congratulations going out to Doug K. You're the winner. Send us your info, webcast@pdq.com. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave us your comments. We love those as well. Have a fantastic week. We'll see you back here next time.